My name is Lauren. I'm 34 years old. I work as a dental hygienist at a practice in the suburbs of Phoenix. My husband Daniel is a project manager at a mid-sized construction firm. We met in our junior year of college, got married at 28, and bought our house 2 years after that. The house was modest. 3 bedrooms, a backyard we always meant to landscape, a neighborhood where people still waved at each other from driveways. We paid for it ourselves. No family money, no help, no gifts. Just two people who saved carefully and bought something they could actually afford. It was ours, every square foot of it. Daniel's mother, Patricia, had a complicated relationship with that word, ours. She was 61 when this story begins. A retired office manager who had raised Daniel alone after his father left when Daniel was 9 years old. She had sacrificed for her son, genuinely, truly sacrificed, and somewhere along the way, that sacrifice had curdled into something else. Something possessive. Something that looked at Daniel's life and saw not his accomplishment, but her investment. She had never liked me. I want to say that plainly. Not because I need you to feel sorry for me, but because it matters for understanding what she did and why. She was never cruel outright. She was the kind of difficult that's hard to explain to people who haven't lived it. The comment, that could be read two ways. The help that came with invisible strings. The smile that never quite reached her eyes when she looked at me. She called Daniel every Sunday morning, before I was awake, usually. Those calls lasted 45 minutes. I told myself none of it was serious. I told myself Daniel saw it, and it bothered him too. I told myself we had a good marriage, a good home, a good life, and difficult mothers-in-law were just part of the package for a lot of people. I was right about one thing. Daniel did see it. I was wrong about how serious it would get. The letter? It arrived on a Tuesday in March. A white envelope with a mortgage company logo I didn't recognize in the top left corner. I opened it, assuming it was junk mail, some company trying to sell us a refinancing offer. Instead, I found a statement, a payment notice, a reference to a home equity line of credit in the amount of $78,000, opened 4 months earlier, attached to our property address. I read it 3 times. Then I sat down on the kitchen floor. We had never applied for a home equity loan. We had never contacted this company. We had never agreed to use our house as collateral for anything. I called Daniel before I stood up. He came home early. We called the mortgage company together that evening, both of us sitting at the kitchen table while our daughter Chloe watched cartoons in the next room. Within 20 minutes, we had confirmed what the letter suggested. A loan had been taken out in both our names. Both our signatures on the paperwork. They emailed us the documents. I looked at the signature next to my name, Lauren Michelle Marsh, and I felt something go cold in my chest. That was not my signature. Daniel, I said. He was already looking at the same page. He didn't say anything for a long time. The notary stamp, he finally said. He pointed at the bottom of the document. A small official seal, a license number. He took out his phone and started typing. I already knew what he was going to find. I think he already knew too. We just weren't ready to say it out loud yet. The notary license belonged to a woman named Denise Fowler. Denise Fowler was Patricia's neighbor, her Thursday night card game partner, a woman who had been in Patricia's kitchen dozens of times. Daniel put his phone face down on the table. He looked at the wall for a moment. Then he looked at me. "I'm sorry," he said. Not defensive, not doubtful, just sorry. Like he already understood everything, and he was already choosing. That moment mattered more than almost anything that came after. The decision. I want to be honest about what the next hour looked like. We cried, both of us. Daniel, because his mother, the woman he had defended, excused, and managed for his entire adult life, had crossed a line so clear and so serious that there was no version of reality where he could pretend otherwise. Me, because I was scared. Our house, our mortgage, our daughter's home, all of it suddenly attached to a fraudulent loan we hadn't known existed. After the crying came the anger, and after the anger came something quieter and more focused. I said, I want to do this right. I don't want to just confront her. I want to make sure she can't undo it. Daniel nodded. What do you need? Time. And a lawyer. He said, whatever you need. That was the moment I knew we were going to be okay. Not because the problem was solved. It was very much not solved. But because I wasn't going to have to fight this alone. My husband was sitting across from me, and he had already chosen, building the case. I called Karen Okafor the next morning. She was a real estate attorney a coworker had recommended. Sharp, direct, the kind of person who doesn't waste words. I explained everything. She said 3 things. 1, do not confront Patricia yet. 2, get every document you can before anyone knows you're looking. 3, this is mortgage fraud and forgery. These are serious crimes. So, for the next 3 weeks, Daniel and I moved quietly. We ordered certified copies of the loan documents. We pulled both our credit reports and found the unauthorized inquiry. We contacted the mortgage company's fraud department officially. We hired a handwriting analyst, a retired forensic document examiner named Dr. Patricia Webb, who reviewed both signatures and confirmed in writing that neither was authentic. Then we tracked down Denise Fowler. Karen handled that conversation. What came out of it was more sad than sinister, in its way. Patricia had told Denise that the loan was a surprise for Daniel and Lauren, a gift meant to be revealed at Christmas. She said they'd already agreed to it verbally but couldn't sign in person due to work schedules. Denise had believed her. She'd notarized the documents without the actual signatories present, which was a clear violation of notary law. Denise cooperated fully from the moment she understood what she'd been used for. The $78,000 we discovered had gone into an account Patricia controlled. She had used most of it to pay off personal debt and cover months of delinquent HOA fees on her condo. The remainder was sitting in savings. Karen filed reports with the Arizona Attorney General's office and the state banking regulator. She also filed a civil petition to invalidate the fraudulent loan. Then we waited. The dinner table. 3 days after we filed, Patricia called and invited us to Sunday dinner. We went. I have thought about that evening many times since. The pot roast. The way she asked Chloe about preschool. The way she passed the breadbasket and talked about her book club. I sat across from the woman who had forged my signature, stolen money against my home, and endangered my family's security, and I smiled, and I passed the breadbasket back. Daniel was quieter than usual. Patricia noticed. "Everything okay, honey?" she asked him. "Just tired," he said. "Work's been busy." On the drive home, he said, "How did you stay that calm?" "I kept thinking about the courtroom," I said. "I kept thinking about the day she doesn't get to perform anymore." He squeezed my hand on the gear shift. The call that changed her strategy. 2 weeks after we filed, Patricia called Daniel. She was crying. She said there had been some kind of misunderstanding involving a loan. She said she didn't understand what was happening. She said she was scared. Daniel listened. Then he said, quietly, "Mom, I need you to hear me very clearly. Lauren and I know exactly what happened. We have documentation of everything. I need you to stop calling me and get a lawyer." Silence. Then, "Daniel, she's turning you against your own mother." "No," he said. "What's turning me against you is what you did to my wife and my home. Those are not the same thing." He hung up. I was standing in the doorway listening. I didn't say anything. He looked at me, and something passed between us, something that felt like the deepest kind of partnership, the kind you can't plan or manufacture, the kind that only shows up when things get hard. The courtroom. The civil hearing was set for a Thursday morning in late October. Patricia arrived with her attorney, a man named Gerald who specialized in estate disputes, and had clearly been briefed to argue this was a family financial misunderstanding, not fraud. Daniel and I sat at the plaintiff's table with Karen. I had dressed carefully, not to impress anyone, just because I wanted to feel like myself, composed, present, ready. Karen had organized our documentation into a clear, methodical presentation. The original loan documents, the handwriting analysis, Denise Fowler's signed statement, the credit report inquiry, the bank records showing where the funds had gone. Gerald's opening argument was that Patricia had believed she was acting in the family's financial interest, that there had been a miscommunication about consent, and that her intent had never been to harm her son and daughter-in-law. Karen's response was brief. She placed the handwriting analysis report on the exhibit table. She placed Denise Fowler's statement beside it. She placed the bank records showing $78,000 dispersed to Patricia's personal account beside that. Then she said, "Your Honor, there was no miscommunication. There were 2 forged signatures, a notary who was deliberately misled, and a direct financial transfer to the defendant's personal account." Intent is demonstrated by action, and the actions here are documented in full. The judge reviewed the exhibits. She asked Gerald 2 questions. He answered both poorly. Then she looked up. "This is Marsh," she said. "The evidence before this court is unambiguous." Patricia had been composed until that moment, sitting straight, hands folded, performing role of wronged grandmother. But when the judge said those words, the composure cracked. Not dramatically, just a slight collapse around the eyes, a recognition. The judge ordered the fraudulent loan invalidated. She ordered Patricia to repay the full $78,000 to the mortgage company. She referred the matter to the county district attorney's office for criminal review. It was over in 40 minutes. Outside the courthouse. We stood on the courthouse steps in the October sun, Daniel, Karen, and me. Karen shook our hands and said she'd be in touch about the criminal referral. Then she left. Daniel and I stood there for a moment. He said, "I need to say something." "You don't have to. I need to," he said. "I spent years telling you she was difficult but harmless. I minimized it. I made you feel like your instincts were wrong. And I'm sorry. You were right. And you handled this better than I ever could have." I looked at him, this man I had built a life with, who had sat at that table, chosen a side, and never wavered. "You showed up," I said. "That's the part that matters." He put his arm around me. We stood there in the sun for another minute. Then we went to pick up Chloe from school. What happened after Patricia was charged criminally with 1 count of mortgage fraud and 1 count of document forgery? She pleaded guilty 4 months later and was sentenced to 3 years of probation and mandatory financial counseling. The criminal conviction is on her permanent record. Denise Fowler's notary license was permanently revoked by the state licensing board. Our house is ours, clean title, no fraudulent liens, no outstanding loans we didn't take out. Our daughter still makes lemonade from the neighbor's lemon tree in the summer. Daniel and Patricia have limited contact now. He calls her occasionally, not out of obligation, but out of something more complicated than anger. She is still his mother. What she did was real. Both of those things are true at the same time, and he lives with that. I don't hate Patricia. I've thought about that a lot, because it would be simpler if I did. But I think what she did came from a place of desperation, an entitlement that she'd been feeding for years. The story she told herself about what she was owed, about what family meant, about whose sacrifices counted more. She was wrong, and now she knows it. The thing about people who count on others staying quiet is that they never prepare for the moment the quiet ends. I stayed quiet for 3 weeks. I gathered everything. I walked into that courtroom with documentation that left no room for a different story. Patricia had spent years believing she was the one who controlled the narrative in our family. She had never once considered that I might be keeping records. There is something I want to say to anyone watching this who recognizes something in Lauren's situation. The most dangerous family members are not the ones who scream. They are the ones who smile. The ones who show up to every dinner and every holiday and perform love so consistently that the people around them stop looking underneath the performance. Patricia did not hate her son. She did not hate her granddaughter. In her own distorted way, she may have even believed she was entitled to what she took, that family money is family money, that her years of sacrifice had earned her a kind of silent ownership over her son's life and assets. That belief is wrong, and it is common, and it causes real damage. Your home, your credit, your name, your financial future, they belong to you. They are not communal property because someone shares your last name, or helped raise your husband, or brings a dish to Sunday dinner. The moment someone treats your assets as accessible without your consent, it doesn't matter what you call the relationship. You call a lawyer. You document everything. You walk into that courtroom, and you let the judge finish the sentence. She thought she owned a piece of our life because she helped build his. But the courtroom that morning made something very clear. The only name on that deed that mattered was mine.